The night was cold, the kind of cold that cuts through walls and makes even the strongest fire seem weak. The wind howled outside the small wooden cabin, and the man inside pulled his blanket tighter around his shoulders. He thought the night would pass in silence, but then it came. A knock. At first it was soft, almost uncertain, but then it came again, louder, desperate. His eyes opened wide. No one knocked at his door at this hour. The cabin was far from the town, hidden deep in the forest. Who could it be, and why now? He stood up slowly, his boots crunching against the wooden floor. His hand moved to the old rifle resting by the door. He had learned long ago never to ignore danger. The knock came a third time, hard, shaking the door slightly. He took a deep breath, pulled the iron latch, and opened the door. What he saw made him freeze. A woman stood there, but not a human woman. Her skin carried a faint silver glow under the moonlight. Her long hair clung to her face, wet with rain. Her large eyes shimmered with fear and exhaustion. Behind her, two small children clung tightly to her legs, their thin bodies trembling in the cold. For a moment, no one spoke. Only the sound of the storm filled the silence. Then, with a voice broken by the night, she whispered words that cut deep into his chest. "I will warm your bed, human. My children need a father." The man blinked, not sure if he had heard right. His grip on the rifle loosened. He had expected a thief, a soldier, maybe even a wandering beast of the forest. But this was something else. The alien widow lowered, her head ashamed of her own words. She had not come to him for love, not even for herself. She had come for her children. Their small faces were pale, their lips dry. Their eyes looked past him into the cabin, searching for warmth, for food, for safety. His chest tightened. He knew the look in their eyes. He had seen it in war, in villages after battles, the eyes of the hungry, the helpless. "Please," she whispered again. "Take us in, just for tonight. I have nothing left to give, nothing but myself." He stepped back slowly, the firelight from the cabin spilling onto the doorway. The children's shadows trembled on the ground. The woman did not step in. She waited, her pride battling her desperation. Her body shook, not only from the cold, but from the fear of rejection. He looked at her arms, at the faint scars around her wrists. They were marks he knew too well. Chains had once been there. She had been a prisoner. His thoughts raced. Why her? Why now? Why his door? There were no accidents in a world like this. Someone had pushed her to this point. Someone had taken everything from her, and now at midnight she had found him. The storm grew stronger. The children coughed softly, and the sound broke the silence. The man finally lowered his rifle. Setting it aside, his voice was rough, but his words were clear. "Come inside." The widow gasped as if she had not expected mercy. She stepped forward slowly, guiding her children into the warmth of the cabin. The firelight touched their faces, showing their hollow cheeks and tired eyes. The children huddled near the flames, whispering softly in their alien tongue. The man watched them, his jaw tight. He knew this was not simple kindness. Taking them in meant trouble. The galaxy was never forgiving, and the marks on the woman's arms told him that danger was not far behind. Still, something in him refused to push them away. He closed the door firmly. The storm shut out. The cabin felt smaller now, heavier with the presence of strangers. But deep inside, he knew this night was only the beginning, because no one came to a man's door at midnight without bringing the shadows of the world with them. The cabin was warmer now, but the air inside was heavy. The human sat on the edge of a wooden chair, staring at the alien woman across the fire. She sat with her children close beside her, their thin arms wrapped around her waist as if afraid someone would tear them away. Her silver-lit skin glowed faintly in the firelight, but her eyes told a different story. They were the eyes of someone who had carried too much pain for too long. She did not meet his gaze. Instead, she looked at the floor, her voice trembling when she finally spoke. "My husband is gone," she whispered. "The war took him." The man said nothing. He knew war well. He had fought in it, lost friends to it, lost pieces of himself to it. But he did not interrupt her. He let her words spill like water breaking through a dam. When he died, they came, she continued. The debt collectors. Her voice cracked. The children pressed closer, as if the memory itself frightened them. They said he owed for the land, for the weapons, for food, for every small thing they gave during the war. They told me a widow is worth nothing but my children. My children can be sold. The human's jaw tightened. He had heard of this before. Merciless traders who turned grief into profit. He felt his hand twitch near the rifle, but he forced himself to stay calm. I had nowhere to go, she said. I tried to work, but no one would hire me, not a widow, not one with children. They called me cursed. Her eyes flickered toward him at last, filled with a strange mix of shame and hope. So I ran, and I hid, but they followed, always. The fire crackled between them, filling the silence. The human leaned forward slowly, his voice low. And tonight, he asked, why my door? Her lips trembled. She swallowed hard, then spoke the words she had held back since the moment. She knocked. Because I can give nothing else, only myself. If you take me, if you let me warm your bed, maybe you will keep my children safe. The words hung in the air like a blade. The man stared at her, stunned by her honesty. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled in her lap. She was not begging for herself, he realized. She was offering her dignity, her very soul, only to protect the two small lives beside her. The children did not understand her words. They only knew the warmth of the fire, the smell of food in the cabin. Their eyes stayed fixed on the table, where a loaf of bread rested. Their hunger was sharp enough to be seen. The man stood slowly, crossed the room, and broke the bread in half. He gave it to the children. Their little hands shook as they accepted it, and when they bit into it, tears rolled down their faces. The alien woman closed her eyes, whispering a sound that was half sob, half prayer. The man returned to his chair, staring at her through the glow of the flames. He could feel her desperation pressing against him, like a storm against a door. She was ready to give up everything she was, just to save them, he asked, quietly. Do you think I am the kind of man who would demand such a price? She flinched, as if the question itself was a strike. For a moment she said nothing, then she raised her head, her eyes shining with tears and defiance. I do not know you, she said. I only know men. Men take, men use. I prayed tonight would be different, but I could not risk hope. I came ready to give what I must. Her words burned in his chest. He wanted to deny her, to push back against the image she had of men like him. But before he could speak, a sound outside caught his ear, a crunch in the snow, faint but clear. His hand moved to the rifle again. He stood silent and motioned for her to keep quiet. Her breath caught, and the children froze, crumbs still in their mouths. The cabin was small. Every creak and whisper outside carried like thunder. He stepped to the window and peered through the narrow crack, tracks fresh in the snow. Too many, not just one. He turned back to her, his voice sharp but low. Did anyone follow you? Her face went pale. She shook her head quickly, but her eyes betrayed doubt. I tried to lose them, she whispered. I ran through the river, through the forest, I thought we were free. The man gritted his teeth. His heart pounded. He had taken them in, and already shadows were at his door. He glanced at the children, huddled near the fire, innocent and unaware of the danger outside. The alien widow clutched them tighter. Her body shook as she whispered, If they find us here, they will kill you too. The man looked at her for a long moment, then at the rifle in his hands. His answer came not with words, but with the way he checked the weapon, the way he stood between her and the door. The widow's eyes widened. She had seen men fight to protect themselves, but never to protect a stranger. For the first time that night, she allowed herself a spark of hope. The night stretched long inside the cabin. The storm outside grew weaker, but the weight inside only grew heavier. The human kept his rifle close, his eyes on the door, his ears strained to catch every sound beyond the walls. But what caught? His heart was not outside. It was inside. Two small children sat by the fire, their thin faces glowing in the light, their cheeks hollow, their hands bony. They ate the bread he had given them slowly, as if afraid it would vanish if they finished. Too fast, their eyes never left the food, not once. The human had seen hunger before. He had seen men on battlefields crawl for scraps. He had seen villages where children fought over crumbs. But this was different. These were not strangers far away. These two were inside his cabin, filling the silence with the sound of weak chewing and soft breathing. The widow sat close to them, her hand resting protectively on their shoulders. Her own lips were dry, her body shaking from exhaustion, but she did not eat. She kept pushing the bread toward her children, as if her body did not matter anymore, only theirs. The man spoke at last, his voice low. "When was the last time you—" The woman looked at him, shame flickering in her eyes. She hesitated before answering. 3 days ago, maybe 4. We found scraps near a campfire, that was all. The man felt a knot form in his chest. He rose from his chair and walked to the wooden shelf, pulling down a small sack. Inside were dried beans, a little salt, and a strip of smoked meat. He placed them on the table. The children's heads turned instantly, their eyes wide, glowing with something close to disbelief, hungry eyes. He began to cook, moving slowly but firmly. The widow watched him, unsure, her lips parted, as if to speak, but no words came. She only stared as the smell of boiling beans and meat filled the cabin. Her children leaned closer, their bodies trembling not from cold now, but from a hunger that had waited too long. When the meal was ready, he poured it into 3 bowls, one for each child and one for the widow. She shook her head quickly. "No, give theirs first." He pushed the bowl toward her anyway, his eyes firm. "Eat," he said simply. She stared at him for a long moment, her pride fighting with her need. At last she gave in, lifting the bowl with trembling hands. Her first bite was small, almost hesitant, as if she did not trust the food to be real. Tears slid down her cheeks as the warmth spread through her body. The children ate faster, though their small hands still shook. The sound of spoons scraping bowls filled the cabin like music. The man sat back, watching quietly, his chest tight. For a moment, there was peace. But peace was fragile, and the night was not yet over. A noise came again from outside, louder this time, not just a step, but the crunch of several feet in the snow. The man's head snapped toward the door. His hand went to the rifle. The widow froze mid-bite, her eyes wide. The children looked between them, frightened by the sudden change. The fire crackled louder. As if mocking the silence, the man stood, his voice sharp but calm. "Stay quiet." He moved to the window again, pulling the curtain just enough to see. In the moonlight, shadows moved, figures slipping between the trees. Too many they were, searching, their heads turning, their voices low but urgent. His pulse quickened. He turned back to the widow, whispering, "They're here." Her face went pale. She clutched her children tighter. Her voice was a broken whisper. "I thought we lost them. I thought—" The man cut her off with a gesture. His mind raced. He had taken them in, fed them, warmed them. Now danger had followed, and it was his cabin they surrounded. The children's hungry eyes turned fearful now, wide and shining in the firelight. They looked not at the food, but at him, at the rifle in his hands. Their small bodies pressed against their mother as if she alone could protect them. The widow's voice shook. "If they find us, they will take my children, they will kill you, leave us human, save yourself." But he shook his head. His eyes burned. "I don't abandon those under my roof." The words hit her harder than the storm outside. She stared at him, breathless, as if she had never heard such a vow before. The footsteps outside grew closer, crunching against the snow, circling. A voice called in the alien tongue, sharp and commanding. The widow flinched, recognizing it instantly. Her grip on her children tightened until her knuckles went white. The man stepped to the door, rifle ready. His eyes never left the wood as shadows passed across the cracks. He could feel their presence, smell the faint smoke of their torches. Inside, the cabin was silent except for the sound of children breathing. Their hungry eyes had become frightened eyes, and yet, in that fear, they still looked at him, the stranger, as if he alone could decide their fate. The man's jaw clenched, His mind was clear now. He had fed them, he had taken them in, and now he would defend them. Whatever hunted them outside would learn what it meant to face a human who refused to turn his back. The forest outside was restless. The snow had stopped falling, but the wind carried voices between the trees, harsh and sharp. The human stood. Near the door, his rifle gripped tight. His breath was steady, but his eyes burned like fire. The widow pressed her children close, her body trembling. She knew those voices. She had heard them when they dragged her husband away. She had heard them when they came for her, when they marked her arms with iron chains. Now they were back, and this time they would not leave without taking something. The cabin felt too small. The fire crackled, but its warmth could not fight the chill that crept into their bones. The children clung to her clothes, whispering softly. Their frightened eyes turned to the human again, watching his every move. He peeked through the narrow crack of the window. Shadows moved between the trees, tall and armed. He counted 5, then 6, then more. Their shapes blurred by the torchlight, but their voices were clear. "They're close." One hissed in the alien tongue. "Find the tracks." Another growled, "She cannot hide forever." The man turned back to the widow. His voice was low, sharp. "They're hunting you." Her eyes filled with tears. She nodded, ashamed. "I thought I lost them. I thought the river washed our trail." "You didn't," he said, his jaw tight. "And now they're here." The children whimpered. She hushed them quickly, her voice soft but shaking. She looked at the man, her lips trembling. "If they come inside, don't fight them. Give me to them. They will leave you if you give me." He stared at her, silent, his eyes hard as stone. Then slowly, he shook his head. "No." Her breath caught. "Why?" she whispered. "Why risk your life for me, for children who are not yours?" He loaded the rifle, the sound echoing through the cabin. His answer was simple. "Because no one else will." The widow's lips parted, but no words came. Her heart pounded, not from fear this time, but from something else, something she had not felt in years. Trust. Outside, the footsteps drew closer. The crunch of snow grew louder. The shadows passed near the window. One stopped, its head turning toward the cabin. The torchlight glowed against the wall. The man's finger tightened on the trigger, his breath steady. He whispered to her without looking away from the door. "Take the children to the back corner, keep them low, don't make a sound." She obeyed quickly, guiding them behind a wooden chest, her arms wrapped tight around them. Her eyes stayed on the man, every movement of his body. A fist pounded. Against the cabin door, hard and commanding, the wood rattled. "Open," a voice roared in the alien tongue. "We know you're inside, widow. You cannot run forever." The children flinched. The widow pressed her hands over their ears. Her body shook. The man stood still, rifle raised. His voice was quiet but deadly. "If they break the door, they won't walk away." The pounding came again, louder. The wood groaned, cracks splintered near the hinges. Another voice shouted, "Human, give her to us. This is not your fight." He almost laughed. A sharp, bitter sound, he called back. "It is now." The shadows outside murmured. The sound of boots in the snow moved around the cabin, circling. They were looking for weakness, searching for a way in. The widow's breath caught as she realized. "What they planned, they'll set fire," she whispered. "They'll burn us out." The human's eyes narrowed. He had thought the same. He checked the rifle again. The weight of it steady in his hands, he moved to the table, blowing out the small lantern to hide their light. Only the fire in the hearth glowed now, flickering against the walls. Silence. For a long moment, only the wind spoke. Then the smell came, faint but clear. "Smoke," the widow gasped. "No," she whispered. "Please. Not again." The man's eyes hardened. He stepped back to the window. His finger brushed the trigger as he saw them, 2 shadows with torches moving toward the walls. He raised the rifle, aimed, and fired. The crack of the shot shattered the night. A torch fell into the snow, sparks scattering. A voice screamed. The forest exploded with noise, shouting, running, the crunch of boots rushing toward the cabin. The children whimpered. The widow held them tighter, her eyes wide, staring at the man who now stood like a wall between them and the darkness. Another torch flew, landing against the wall. Flames licked upward. The man cursed under his breath, grabbing a blanket and slamming it against the wood to smother the fire. Smoke filled the air, but the flames died before they spread. He turned, back rifle ready, his voice sharp. They won't stop, they'll keep coming until they break this place down. The widow's tears fell, her voice shook. Then we're already dead. The man shook his head. His eyes burned with something stronger than fear. Not while I'm standing. Outside, the forest roared with angry voices. The shadows closed in. The cabin groaned under the storm of fists and weapons striking the walls. Inside, the children huddled together, their hungry, eyes now full of terror. The widow whispered prayers in her broken voice, but her gaze stayed fixed on the man standing tall, rifle raised, and for the first time she wondered if maybe, just maybe, fate had brought them to the right door. The night turned into a battlefield. The cabin shook as fists and weapons pounded against the walls. The voices of the hunters grew louder, angrier. Their torches lit the snow outside, glowing like burning eyes in the forest. Inside, the human stood firm, rifle in hand, his jaw tight, his chest steady. The widow clutched her children in the corner, their small bodies hidden beneath her arms. The fire in the hearth flickered wildly, casting long shadows across the wooden walls. A heavy thud slammed against the door. The hinges cracked. Dust fell from the beams above. The human raised the rifle, his voice calm but strong. "Stay behind me." The widow's heart pounded. She wanted to scream, to beg him not to fight, but the words froze in her throat. Something in his eyes told her he was not a man who backed down, not when lives depended on him. The attackers shouted in their alien tongue, demanding the widow, promising to spare the human if he gave her up. He answered with silence. His finger brushed the trigger. The door cracked open. A shadow forced its way in, torchlight spilling across the floor. The man fired. The sound exploded inside the cabin. The shadow fell back, crashing into the snow. Chaos followed. The hunters roared, more torches thrown toward the cabin walls. Flames spread fast, licking at the wood. Smoke poured inside. The children coughed, their frightened cries muffled by their mother's embrace. The widow's eyes filled with tears. "They'll burn us alive," she whispered, her voice breaking. The man grabbed a heavy pot of water from the hearth and hurled it against the wall. The flames hissed and died, but more fire spread on the other side. Heat filled the cabin. The smell of ash stung their noses. He shouted, "Help me!" his voice sharp, commanding. The widow hesitated, then obeyed. She snatched up blankets, beating down the flames with trembling hands. Her children pressed into the farthest corner, eyes wide with terror. Together they fought the fire. Smoke filled their lungs, their faces streaked with sweat and soot. The walls groaned, the wood threatening to give way, but they did not stop. Not until the flames shrank, smothered under wet cloth and snow dragged in from outside. The cabin was blackened, scarred, but still standing. The widow collapsed against the wall. Coughing, her children ran to her, hugging her tightly. Tears streaked her face as she whispered, Why are you doing this?" The man reloaded the rifle, his voice hard. "Because no one else will stand for you." Before she could answer, another crash shook the cabin. The hunters had returned, angrier than before. Shadows filled the windows, their weapons striking the walls. Splinters flew through the air. The man positioned himself at the door, rifle raised. His breath was steady, his body unshaken. He had been here before, in war, in fire, in blood, and he would not falter now. He fired again. The shot pierced the night. One shadow fell. Another screamed. The hunters pulled back, but only for a moment. Their voices carried through the smoke, promising vengeance. The widow watched him, her heart torn. She had seen men fight for money, for pride, for blood, but never for a stranger, never for children that were not his. She whispered softly, almost to herself, "You are not like the others." The children stared at him too, their hungry eyes now filled with something else, something brighter, a fragile seed of hope. The forest grew quiet for a moment. Only the crackle of dying flames and the moans of the wounded filled the air. But silence was never safe. It was only the breath before the storm. The man stepped back, his rifle steady. He turned to the widow, his voice low but clear. They'll come again stronger. They won't stop until they take what they came for. Her body shook. Her eyes burned with fear. Then we cannot stay. We must run. He shook his head. No, running won't save you. They'll hunt you forever. The only way is to stand. She stared at him, shocked. Stand against them, against all of them. Yes, he said simply, his eyes hard as steel. Because once they learn I won't give you up, they'll have to decide how much they're willing to lose. The widow's breath caught. She saw no fear in his face, only resolve. She felt her heart tremble, torn between fear of death and a strange new trust. Outside, the hunters regrouped. Their voices rose, calling for reinforcements, promising to return with fire and blood. The human shut the door, his rifle resting against his shoulder, his voice steady. This isn't over. Not tonight. The widow hugged her children. Her tears fell silently, but inside something began to change. For the first time in years, she did not feel completely alone. And though the cabin was scarred by fire and ash, the night had not broken them, not. Yet the cabin smelled of smoke and damp wood. The walls were scarred, blackened from the flames. The human stood near the window, rifle resting against the wall beside him. His eyes never left the forest. He knew they would return stronger. The widow sat on the floor, her children curled against her sides, their small bodies finally at rest, but their faces still showed fear. She stroked their hair softly, her own eyes heavy with exhaustion. For a moment she looked at the human, his tall figure outlined by the fading glow of the fire, and she wondered what kind of man chooses to fight for strangers. Silence stretched, broken only by the crackle of dying embers. Then she spoke, her voice low. You should not risk your life for us. They will kill you. You owe us nothing. The man turned slowly, his face calm but firm. I took you in. That means you're mine to protect. Her lips trembled. But we are not your family. His gaze hardened. Maybe not by blood, but family is more than blood. The word struck her like a blow. She lowered her head, unable to answer. Her children stirred in their sleep, one whispering the word father in their alien tongue. Her heart broke, and yet, in that moment, something inside her began to mend. The human sat down across from her, leaning against the wall. He set the rifle on his lap, ready even in rest. His eyes softened for the first time since the night began. Tell me about him, he said quietly. She looked up, startled. Who? Your husband, he answered. The one they took from you. Her eyes filled with tears. She hugged her children closer. Her voice cracked as she spoke. He was kind. He believed the war would bring us peace. He believed his sacrifice would keep us safe. But when he died, they came for us anyway. They told me his death meant nothing, that his honor was worthless, only debt remained. Her tears fell freely now. Her voice broke with anger and grief. They made me a widow, and then they tried to make me a slave. The man's jaw tightened. His hand gripped the rifle. Not anymore, he said firmly. Not while I'm here. She stared at him, her chest tight. Her heart screamed that this was foolish, that no one could stand against the hunters. But her soul whispered that maybe, just maybe, this man could. The night deepened, and with it, her fear. She stood slowly, placing a blanket over her children, then walked toward him. Her eyes searched his face. If we stay, they will kill you. If we leave, they will find us. Either way, death follows us. The man met her gaze, steady as stone. Then let it follow us. We'll face it together. Her breath caught. The words were simple, but they tore through the walls around her heart. She shook her head weakly. You don't understand. If they catch me, they will not stop with me. They will take my children. They will break them, use them. You cannot fight the galaxy for us. He leaned forward, his voice sharp but calm. I don't need to fight the galaxy. I only need to fight the ones who stand at my door. She froze, staring at him. His words burned into her like fire. She had begged, bargained, lowered herself to survive. But here was a man who refused to let her fall, not because he wanted her body, but because he chose to see her as more than property. Her knees weakened. She sank to the floor, covering her face with her hands. Her voice was a broken whisper. Why would you do this? Why, when you could send us away, when you could live, free without our curse? The man's answer came without hesitation. Because no child should cry for food, no woman should sell herself for safety, not while I can stand. Her tears poured, her chest shook. She looked up at him through blurred eyes, and for the first time she believed him. The children stirred again. The youngest lifted her head. Eyes half open, she reached out a tiny hand toward the man, whispering in her soft voice, "Father." The human froze. His chest tightened. He looked at the child, then at the widow. Her breath caught. She did not correct the child. She did not pull her away. The cabin was silent, only the word remained, hanging in the air like a fragile flame. "Father." The man reached out slowly, his rough hand covering the child's small fingers, his voice low but steady. "Then I will be." The widow gasped softly. Her heart broke and healed all at once. She pulled her children close, her tears falling against their hair. She looked at him, her voice trembling. "If you do this, there is no turning back. You will share our burden, our curse, our fight." He nodded once, his eyes unshaken. Then, "It is mine now." Outside, the forest was restless. Torches glowed faintly between the trees. Shadows gathering for the next strike. The hunters had returned with more, their anger burning hotter than before. The widow saw them through the crack of the window. Her voice trembled. "They're coming again. More of them." The man stood, lifting the rifle to his shoulder, his eyes burned with resolve. "Good," he said. "Then let them see what a family fights for." The forest was alive with torches. Dozens of shadows moved among the trees, their voices sharp and angry. The snow crunched beneath their boots as they closed in around the cabin. This time they had come prepared, no longer just hunters but a mob. Inside, the widow clutched her, children to her chest. Her heart raced with terror, but her eyes kept turning to the man who stood at the door. His rifle steady, his shoulders square, his face was carved with resolve. He was one man against many, and yet he did not waver. The children whispered softly, their voices trembling. The youngest buried her face into her mother's chest, whispering that single word again, "Father." The man heard it. His chest tightened, but his stance grew even stronger. He whispered without turning, "Stay low. Stay behind me. No matter what happens, do not move until I say." The widow's lips trembled. She wanted to beg him not to fight, to run with them into the night. But she saw something in his eyes that silenced her. This was not a man who ran. This was a man who stood. The first strike came, a heavy blow against the cabin wall. Then another, louder. Wood splintered, snow fell from the roof with each impact. The hunters shouted, their voices full of rage. "Give her to us, human," they cried. "She is ours by law. You cannot protect her." He called back, his voice like thunder. "Your law means nothing to me." The door rattled, hinges strained. Then it burst open. A shadow charged inside with a torch raised high. The man fired, the shot echoed, the shadow fell, the torch rolling across the floor. The firelight flickered against the walls. The hunters outside roared in anger. More rushed forward, pounding against the doorway. The man fired again, and again. Each shot forced them back, bodies falling into the snow. But for every one that fell, two more came. The widow covered her children's ears, but their eyes stayed wide, watching through tears as the human fought, his body framed by the firelight. His rifle thundered like a storm. He was a wall that would not break. But the hunters were many and bullets were few. The man's rifle clicked empty, his breath heavy. He grabbed the old axe, leaning against the wall, his grip strong, his voice low. "Then steel it is." The door shattered wider. Shadows poured in. The man swung the axe, the wooden handle cracking, against armor. The blade cutting deep, the clash filled the cabin with sparks and cries. The widow gasped. Her children screamed. But she saw him still standing, still fighting, his eyes blazing with fire. He was not only defending them, he was declaring to the world that they were his. One hunter broke through. Reaching for her, she cried out, but before the hand touched her, the man struck. The axe came, down, the hunter fell, the human's voice thundered. No one touches them. The mob outside hesitated. Their voices wavered. They had expected fear, they had expected surrender. Instead, they found fury. The snow was red now, bodies scattered at the threshold, the torches burned lower, the hunters began to pull back, their courage faltering. The widow watched in disbelief, her tears streaming. She whispered, You are only one man." He turned his head slightly, his chest rising and falling with heavy breath. His answer was simple. "One is enough," the hunters shouted again, but their voices carried more fear than rage. They dragged their wounded into the forest. Their torches disappeared one by one, until only silence remained. The human lowered the axe at last, his body heavy with exhaustion, his breath sharp in the smoky air. He looked back at the widow and her children. Their faces, pale, their eyes wide, he spoke softly. "It's over. For now." The widow rushed forward, falling to her knees before him. Her tears spilled as she pressed her forehead to the floor. "You saved us. You gave us back life. I have nothing to give you. Nothing." He reached down, lifting her gently. By the shoulders, his voice was rough but steady. "You've given me enough, a reason to fight, a family." Her breath caught. Her children clung to his legs, calling him father again. Not in fear this time, but in trust, in love. The cabin was broken. The night was scarred with blood and ash. But inside, something new was born. A family. The widow looked into his eyes, her voice trembling but sure. "Then we belong to you, as you belong to us." He nodded, his eyes softening at last. "So be it." Outside, the forest was silent, but the galaxy beyond was not. The hunters would return, others would come. But tonight, a stand had been made. A widow and her children were no longer prey. They had a protector, a father, a man who chose them, and the stars themselves would remember the night when one human stood against the darkness and did not fall.